Okay, we're going to look on how to put together a Spektrum module for Futaba radios. This is the component that you will be using to create the module. And together with this, you're going to need two more things. Spektrum module for Futaba. DSM2 Spektrum module for Futaba. I call it DM8. The part number though is SPMMS FUT720. So it's a DSM module, DSM2 module for Futaba. And the other thing you're going to need is the integrated case for JR compatible air mod. And again, the part number on that is going to be SPM6817. Okay, so these two combined with a little package you're going to receive is all you need to put together the module. Now there's two versions of this. This is the 8 channel, the 8FG version. There's also 6 and 7 channel with a much longer trainer cord, and the only difference between them is where we're going to make the hole for the trainer cord. The 8 channel is going to have the hole in the bottom. The 6 and 7 channel is going to have the hole on the side so that the wire can wrap around and come in upside down. You'll notice in the bag we have the module itself, which is a little printed circuit board with a plug and a switch, and there's a little 5-pin pin header which we're going to use later when we assemble it. Okay, this is going to be a throwaway piece we just needed for part of the assembly. Okay, so here are the tools you're going to need to put this together. First of all, these are the things that are going to be required. We're going to need a marker. I have a silver Sharpie here. A black one may work just as well. Maybe a pen. X-Acto knife. A nice sharp blade if possible. We need to drill some holes. I like to drill my holes by hand. I think it's more precise. And then I use a knife reamer to make the holes larger. But you can definitely use a power drill or larger drill bits if that's better for you. Okay. In addition, you may find useful, although they're not strictly necessary, I have some cutters here in different sizes. I also have a razor saw. Sometimes you may find it easier to cut some of the cuts with a razor saw instead of the X-Acto blade. And then finally, at the end of the day, you need some Velcro to attach the module to the back of your radio. Okay. Alright, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up our case. We'll take out the case, and the particular reason I do this first is because I'm actually out for the little Allen wrench that comes with the case. That's what we're going to use next. Be very careful with the little plastic button. This is going to be for a bind button on our case, right? So we're going to go ahead and look at our case real quickly. You can see that the holes are offset on the bottom. So this does have a particular side. It does not fit backwards, so it's got to fit in this orientation. And that's going to be relevant when we put in the module itself. Okay. So for now we set this aside and take out our Allen wrench. Save the rest of the parts. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out the module from our module box, and what we actually need here is just the module itself. You may choose to take out other stuff, but for now all we're going to use is the module itself. So I'm going to take out the module. I'm going to set the rest of the stuff aside for later. Okay, now that we have the module out of the case, we're going to go ahead and take it apart. So we're going to use a little Allen wrench and take out the 4 Allen screws in the case. Alright, let's take a look inside the module. The first thing we'll do, we'll go ahead take off the little button. This button is shorter than the other one, so don't mix it up with the one we're actually going to be using. And finally, we're going to take out the board. Again, we don't need any of the old case. We just care about the board itself. Now you'll notice that the board actually has two parts. It's got the signal circuitry on this side, and under the little metal shield it's got the transmission circuitry. And it's got a little connector, so we can actually pull this apart. And we're going to pull this apart for now and set the connection circuitry. We're going to set that aside. What we're going to work with right now is just the signal board. Okay? This signal board is going to fit inside of our case. And the way it's going to sit is, if we look at the ridge that faces towards the top of our module, so towards the antenna side of the module, the big gap is going to face towards the top. Now we're going to drop this in here, and you're going to notice a few things, and that is that the holes don't actually line up perfectly. When all said and done, we don't actually get these holes to line up, but instead our screws are going to go on the outside of the circuit here. So if I highlight here with the Allen wrench, on this side the screws are actually going to go through these gaps on the outside, right? This particular screw that we have that sits right there in the middle, we're not going to be able to use that one at all because it goes right through our connector. So there's no choice. This one has to go. And then the very last one we have is this one out here. Well, no matter what we do, we can't get that one to line up. So the first modification we need to do is we need to make a little cut to the printed circuit board to make that particular screw line up. So I'll take out that board. I'm going to actually go ahead and mark that with my Sharpie and give you a little close-up here of the section that's going to come off. You see that silver section right there? That's what's going to come off. So simply enough, I'm just going to take my X-Acto to it, or you can take your razor saw, whichever mechanism you want, and go ahead and just cut that off. There's the cut, and you can see. Now when I drop that into the case here, you'll be able to see how that lines up. And as I slide my Allen wrench right in there, you'll see that that screw will go. Okay? So that's the first thing that we did. Now the other thing that we need to do is we need to make an adjustment to the case itself, because it has 4 posts. They're going to match those 4 holes. Well, guess what? This one single post here is going to run into our connector there. So that one needs to be cleared out. Okay? Again, you could cut it off with your X-Acto. You could take it off with a razor saw. I'll go ahead and try. I'm going to go ahead and try some nippers first. See how that works out. Alright, that's probably good enough, right? If you really want to, you can shave that down a little bit more, but it's not that critical. There's a ridge right there. Alright, so you see that was pretty straightforward. Okay? So now we can do a quick dry fit, make sure that the case is going to come together. Okay? So what we want to make sure right now is that the module fits in there. Nothing in the way. And apparently we're good to go. Okay? So that's the first half of the battle. Done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out our components. Now, I'll give you a sense of how this is all going to fit together, right? We're going to have the switch up towards the top, and we're going to have the connector off towards the bottom, okay? And these little prongs are actually going to plug into that existing connector that's already there. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mark the hole for the switch. And the switch can actually fit in a couple of different orientations. It can go flat this way, or it can go vertical this way. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and take my Sharpie marker, and I am going to look for a spot that is basically right in the center of a square, a horrible square, drawn between these 2 corners, right? The 2 corners of the board right there. Try to get this a little bit closer. The 2 corners of the board right there, right, and the top of the box. So if you take a look at the square I tried to draw, it goes from these 2 corners up here, and I'm going to find the center of that square, and that's going to be the exact spot where I'm going to drill my hole. So roughly, draw a quick X. X marks the spot. So roughly the center of that X is where I'm going to go ahead and drill my hole. Okay? What's going to go through that hole again is going to be our switch. So let me just take these components off the switch. And you can go ahead and measure this. I don't really honestly know how much it is. I believe it's a 1/4 inch. You'll aim for 1/4 inch hole. I don't usually measure because I creep up on it with my razor reamer. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll start my hole right there on the X. Drill it all the way through. That's the first part of the hole. Then I'll go to my razor reamer. I'll just start making the hole bigger. And when I feel that it's close, I'll start measuring There we go. Switch is fitting. Okay. First hole, we'll have to make one second hole. Now the second hole is basically going to go on the outside of where this board is and this connector goes. So I'm going to go somewhere here. The other thing about the second hole is that without unsoldering these wires, I can't actually feed this cable through a hole, right? So instead what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a slot. So I'm going to go ahead and find a spot that's a little to the side here and fairly close to the top. And I'm going to look at roughly what depth I need. I actually need a little extra depth just because there's a ridge here. I'll look at roughly what depth I need, and I'm going to eyeball a hole right about there. Again, I'm going kind of rough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right, so we have a hole right about there. It's a little bit to the side of the white connector. And fairly close to the top, I want basically half the thickness of my wire. Right, so I'm looking for about half the thickness of my wire to go over that particular spot. And I'm basically going to go ahead, take my module out, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did a second ago. Now, by presenting that in front of the hole, I can see that's pretty much right there. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and clean up this hole from the back side. And then, similar to what I did with this side, I'm going to actually cut myself a notch in the plastic that goes all the way down. There we go. And the wire fits. But the zip tie is going to keep me in. Okay, it's time for final assembly. We go back to our little bag with a plastic button and our 4 screws. So they came with an integrated case, and this is basically the sequence of assembly. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is we're going to install the board itself against the signal board. Okay, and for order to do that, we want to plug this in here. Fortunately, this plug is designed to go from the bottom, right, from this side, not from the top. So this won't want to actually bite. So for that particular reason, you have this extra pin header. You're going to insert that from the bottom side all the way to the end, so where the black bottom's out. And then you'll be able to see those pins show up through the gaps right in there. And what you're going to do now is you're going to take the other board, line it up all the way to the top. Maybe a little bit hard to see, but all the way to this end. Right, all the way to this end. And what you're going to try to do is push out the other pin header. And as soon as that happens, you'll notice that the board will seat itself in the right position. That board is now done. It doesn't need to move anymore. Okay? Next part of the assembly is going to be to insert the switch. I'm going to go ahead and just insert that switch right there. Push it through the hole. And once it's in position, we're just going to set the board down into the module. Make sure you're up over the posts and feed the cable through the slot. Okay? Seats all the way down that way and all the way in this direction. Again, so that these particular holes here allow the screws to come through. So I'm actually going to pre-feed my screws. 1, 2, and the third one we're going to use. Make sure they're in position. They may fall out later, but we want to try to get them kind of staged so that we're ready to go. There are the screws. Before I do anything else, I'm going to want to tighten my switch. So I use a little lock washer. And nut. You can grab some pliers or whatnot if you want. Just give this a little bit of a squeeze. Doesn't have to be too tight, just enough so it's not going to move on you. Okay. it's in the right position, operates correctly. Okay, make sure this is seated all the way down. You want the plug to face towards the bottom, right? So we're good here. What I want to do here though is turn my zip tie to the side a little bit. Again, get that plug facing the bottom. Okay, make sure this is all nice and seated as far as it'll go. And we're going to lay our bind switch extension. And now we're going to go to the top half of the unit. We're going to grab our transmit module. I'm going to plug that antenna in. And this is a very critical step. You need to make sure, absolutely sure, that this antenna is nice and well seated. Okay? And feel a solid bite. One last thing that you may want to do, as you can see, there's no real circuit elements on that bottom side, but I'm a little bit of a kind of cautious. I'm the cautious type, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some double stick tape, cut off a little piece, and just slap it on there, and have this as an insulator. Make sure I'm not going to accidentally have a short. Now you can choose to take off the backing or not. It's not that critical. I will go ahead and take off the backing. That'll just give me a more firm assembly when everything's said and done. And then we're just going to close up the box. Plug this back in where it came out of. Squeeze it all the way down. Drop in again our bind plug. Slide the antenna to the side. Do not over tighten the screws, just enough so the case doesn't open up anymore. We're done. I'm going to slap some Velcro on the back. But before we do that, here's our extra screw, a really quick test. Okay. Alright, so I've hooked up the module to the back of my radio. I flip the switch that turns on the radio, and it'll tell me trainer cable is connected. And you'll see the little trainer logo, 2 radios with a trainer cord. Solid light in the back here, that means it's transmitting. Alright, solid light, transmitting. Go ahead and flip the switch again, turn it off. So here's a receiver, satellite, servo, our battery. And plug in the battery. I get a flashing light, basically telling me that the receiver is in bind mode. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press my bind button and flip my switch. You see the light come on and start blinking. You see the receiver automatically go into bind mode. There, our satellite is bound. Our main receiver is bound. And our servo is operating. Hi Daisy, you like the servo? Oh, does that scare you? Oh yes! It's gonna get you. It's gonna get you. Okay, like I said, some quick Velcro. Slap some Velcro on the module, slap some Velcro on the back of your radio. You got a fully working Spektrum module.